Well, it's time for the big one. Yep, so the Premier League is finally back, and that means it's time to make some predictions that will either make me look like a football genius or more likely an idiot by October. Today, I'm going to attempt to predict the entire 26-27 Premier League season, covering the title race, the European spots, and the relegation battle, and we'll sprinkle in a few bold takes here and there that almost guarantee to age horribly. So, grab your league table, let me know your predictions in the comments below, and let's see how wrong we both are come May. Now, it must be noted, the transfer window is still open at time of recording, so there will still be players that leave and players that join, but at this moment in time, this is how I see the Premier League finishing at the end of the year. Let's go. So, in normal Premier League prediction fashion, we're going to start off at 20th and make our way up the table. So the first team, I've got the one going down bottom of the league. Unfortunately, it's going to have to be Hull City. Now, I really didn't want to do this, but they've not really given me anything to show otherwise. Now, to their credit, they proved pretty much everybody wrong last season, including myself, as they overcame a transfer embargo and eventually earned promotion through the playoffs under Sergej Djurkovic. And that was despite the stats saying otherwise. Their defensive, counter-attacking style could actually suit the Premier League, and I think they'll cause a few teams some problems. My main concern is simply whether there's enough quality in the squad to keep them up. They've made some very interesting moves this summer. Tzlakis is the standout signing, around from Olympiacos for around 20 million, while Hidemasa Morita brings Champions experience into their midfield as well. They've also added some experienced Premier League names like Matt Targett and Jack Butland, alongside some younger, higher upside signings like Jens Herjtodal, Lucas Harrington, and Noble Mendy. My main concern is that despite spending a fair amount of money and still reportedly bringing in signings as well, it still feels like a squad that needed a massive overhaul after promotion. Now, I've seen teams overhaul themselves and stay up, like Forest, for example, but they've lost some important attacking output as well. And I'm not really sure how Ollie McBurney will do in the Prem, so I'm still not convinced there's enough goals or proven Premier League quality in the squad to really keep them up. I do think Hull City will be competitive, and they're probably going to surprise a few teams. Over 38 games, I just think they're a little bit short at the moment. So I've got them going down in 20th. Then in 19th place, I've got Ipswich Town. Yes, I think Ipswich will go straight back down again. Sorry, Tractor Boys. I actually think that Ipswich have had quite an impressive window so far, bringing in plenty of quality after promotion. So I had to bump them up for my initial prediction where I had them bottom. Emerson is the headline addition up front, whilst Abdul Fataru and Dyson Maida gave them the pace and threat out wide. Going from Celtic to the Prem will be quite the step up, so it'll be very interesting to see how he plays, but I think he's a decent player, and he's also got, Champions League experience as well. They've also added some proven Premier League experience to their ranks with the likes of Sasa Lukic and Issa Diop, both great signings from Fulham, alongside Florentino Luis and Kjell Sherpen. I think some good additions as well. The main concern for me, and why I initially had them bottom, is losing Kieran McKenna. He was such a huge part of Ipswich's rise and success, and whilst Gary O'Neill does have the Premier League experience and should still keep them competitive, replacing McKenna is still a massive ask because he was largely why Ipswich had done so well, and I'm not confident. I still think this is a stronger side than we saw when Ipswich were last in the Premier League. They were kind of preparing for another season in the Championship. But players like Jack Clark, Fatawu, and Maida might give them enough quality to make survival run close. But with so much change on the pitch and in the dugouts, I think they're ultimately going to fall just short. 19th place. Then in 18th place, and this probably be quite a surprise prediction, but I've got Fulham. Now, Fulham, they've been a really stable mid-table side for the past couple of years, but this summer has seen a massive amount of change. Marco Silva has gone, which is huge in itself. Harry Wilson and Raul Jimenez have also gone, taking a huge chunk of last season's goals with them. And again, that's huge. I do really like the signing of Shea Charles, though. He was one of the standout young midfielders in the Championship last season, combining that defensive presence with real composure and press resistance on the board. He's a really good player, and he's still only young at 22 years old, already a full Northern Ireland international, and contributed 6 goals and 2 assists in 38 appearances last season. I think he has all the tools to become a very good Premier League midfielder, and would have taken him at Forest 100%. Gonzalo Garcia is another exciting addition from Real Madrid, alongside Cesar Palacios. But my main concern is that Fulham are replacing proven Premier League quality with potential. And then there's Alvaro Arbeloa. He did a respectable job after being thrown into the deep end with Real Madrid last season, but his senior managerial experience is still extremely limited. And replacing someone like Marco Silva, whilst also adapting to the Premier League, is going to be a massive challenge. With a new manager and just so much attacking output walking out the door, I think this could finally be the year that Fulham get dragged into trouble, and ultimately, I have them going down. I think it'll be very close. I don't think they're a shoo-in for relegation. There are a few teams that I could have put in this spot, but for me, I think it's Fulham that go down. A very rogue shout, don't get me wrong, but there's something about it, man. I don't feel confident for them. Then in 17th place, and another crazy shout from me, but I've got Coventry City just about surviving. Now, Coventry, they were outstanding in the Championship last season. They scored 97 goals on their way to the title. And I think that momentum, combined with the continuity of Frank Lampard, gives them a better chance of staying up than I've seen some people suggest. It's far too easy to put all the promoted sides in the relegation zone. That didn't happen last season. I don't think it's going to happen this season either, because I think Coventry have what it takes to stay up. They've shown plenty of ambition in the transfer market. Carl Rushworth has returned permanently after being excellent on loan last season. That fella, he's absolutely going to be a future England international. You can mark my words on that. While Caleb Urinki is a really exciting addition as well after impressing in Denmark and at the World Cup too. And I absolutely love the return of Gustavo Harmer for around £6 million, bringing back someone who already knows the club and has proven that he can produce in the Premier League. Looks like a brilliant bit of business, and I think they even made some profit on him as well, bringing him back for less than they sold him to Sheffield United. That's good business. Alongside their additions, there are reports that Siddiqui Sharif and Taiwo Awoniyi are close to joining or have joined the club as well to really bolster their front line. I'm a big fan of Taiwo from his time at Nottingham Forest. It's a shame to see him go, but if you keep him fit, he's going to score goals in this league for sure. Great play you've got on your hands there, Cov. There are obviously questions over how much Premier League experience this squad has, and they're probably going to take a few batterings along the way. They are newly promoted after all. But with players like Haji Wright, Jack Rudoni, and Milan Van Erik, I pronounced that wrong, I do apologise. I think they've got enough quality and goals to make a real fight of it. And I think they do it, to be honest, you know. It's going to be incredibly close, probably going down to the final few games, but I think Coventry have just enough to scrape survival. And I really hope at least one newly promoted side stays up as well. And it's always good to have some new blood like a Coventry in there, someone who's not been promoted in a while. So yeah, I think they're staying up. And then in 16th place, I've got Crystal Palace. So yeah, I think Palace are going to take quite a big step backwards this season. They're around the same place last season anyway, so it's not really a massive downgrade. But I do have my reasons. So yeah, they've enjoyed an incredible couple of years, but the side responsible for that success is gradually being pulled apart, as you would expect. Oliver Glasner has left. He left in January. Maxence Lacroix is another huge departure from that defence as well. I'm very intrigued by Pierre Sarge as Glasner's replacement. His work in France was excellent. He took Lens to second in Ligue 1 and won the Coupe de France with them. But he's still relatively inexperienced at the highest level and has no previous Premier League experience either. Taking over from their most successful manager throughout their history, whilst immediately balancing Premier League and Europa League football, is a pretty sizable step up from the French league. There is still plenty of quality in this Palace side with Adam Wharton, Ismail Assar, Daniel Munoz and Dean Henderson all still there. And I do like the additions of Oscar Mingueza and Takehiro Tomiyasu, with Gesson also returning, who was on loan last season. Tomiyasu brings plenty of Premier League experience and versatility. If he can stay fit, it's a wonderful signing. Dwight McNeil is also joined from Everton, with Brennan Johnson going the other way. I'm not really sure about that piece of business, to be honest. It seems a bit of a sideways step, but he's probably going to score against Forest, so there is that. But with the managerial change, the key departures and added demands of the Europa League, it's a lot harder than the Conference League. I do think Palace could regress quite significantly. I don't think they'll go down, but I can see him being a lot closer to the relegation battle than Europe this time around. It's going to be very tough for Palace this season. They'll survive. They've got enough quality to survive, but It's going to be a tough watch for many Palace fans, I think. And then in 15th place, I've got Sunderland. So yeah, I think Sunderland are going to take a bit of a step backwards this season as well. Now, that might sound harsh after an unbelievable first season back in the Premier League. They finished 7th, qualifying for the Europa League. But I think matching that again is going to be incredibly difficult. And I just don't think they will. The biggest factor for me is Europe. Sunderland now have to deal with those Thursday, Sunday turnarounds. And whilst I really do like this squad, I'm not completely convinced that their depth is there yet to compete deep into the Europa League without their league form taking a hit as well. We saw it with Forest. We saw it with Palace. These teams that aren't used to Europe or haven't been in Europe for so long are going to struggle. Their business has also been relatively quiet as well compared with the last summer's huge overhaul. But keeping Granit Xhaka is massive, and they even managed to rebuff Chelsea, who came calling. Sunderland held firm, and that is incredible. He was instrumental to their staying up last season and their performances. So keeping a hold of him, really good stuff. And that's alongside players like Enzo Lefebvre, Habib Diarra, Noah Siddiqui, and Nordi Mukiele, and Brian Brobby. There's still a lot of quality in this Sunderland side and plenty of room for this young side to improve as well. I just think with a European run, combined with the difficulty of replicating such an incredible last season, will lead to some natural regression. I think that's fair to say. Again, they've not really strengthened their squad much, and a lot more football will need to be played by Sunderland as well, going to 4 competitions instead of 3. I'm sure they'll stay up. I don't think they're going to get relegated, but they are going to regress from last season. That's just going to happen. Then in 14th place, I've got Everton. I think the days of Everton being constantly dragged into relegation battles are probably behind them, especially under David Moyes. But I'm still not completely convinced there's enough to really push much higher up the table. They actually threatened the European places at one stage last season before a really poor finish saw them end in 13th. So I've got them dropping down a place. But I do quite like a bit of their summer business, to be honest. Hayden Hackney is probably the standout signing for me. He was one of the best championship midfielders last season. And Christian Jørgaard also adds some much needed experience and some defensive nous as well to the side. Good signing. And the addition of Brennan Johnson gives them some much needed pace and directness out wide. Brennan Johnson is a good player, and I think Everton, he'll show that. And there's still plenty of quality there as well, with the likes of Jordan Pickford, Jad Branthwaite, Keenan Dewsbury-Hall, and James Garner among the standouts for me. My biggest question, though, is where these goals are going to come from. Beto and Barry have really not proven they can be prolific Premier League strikers yet. I think Barry probably has the best chance of the two from doing so. And there's also the uncertainty around Ndai's future as well. Ultimately, Moyes gives Everton a pretty high ceiling, and I think they've recruited sensibly, but I'm not quite seeing enough, in my opinion, to predict a genuine push for Europe just yet. But they'll be more than fine around the mid-table. They were quite a tough side to really predict, though. I was umming and ahhing about where to really put them. I think 14th, it's about right. We then move on to 13th, and I've got Newcastle United. So yeah, I think Newcastle were one of the hardest teams to predict this season. This is a club that's going through a massive transition after a really disappointing campaign last season, with Eddie Howe leaving and Matthias Yassel coming in to replace him. Now, Yassel is a really interesting appointment, as he has enjoyed success abroad, but this is also his first job in the Premier League after previously managing in Austria and Saudi Arabia. He's coming into one of the most demanding leagues in the world while simultaneously being asked to oversee a massive rebuild at Newcastle. So I think there could naturally be some bedding in time that we need to give them for this new season. More importantly, Newcastle have lost 3 enormous players in Bruno Guimaraes, Sandro Tonali, and Anthony Gordon. Huge losses, all 3 of those. Their response has been to focus heavily on younger, more high upside players, with the likes of Aladaji Bamba, Bazumana Traore, and Sean Sturr forming part of a much more youthful looking rebuild. Sturr looks pretty good from what I've heard, and as does Traore as well. Bamba doesn't look too bad either, to be fair. There's a lot of potential there, but asking these young players to immediately replace the much proven Premier League experience, that quality, is a massive gamble and a lot to ask of these young players. There is still plenty of talent in the squad, to be fair, and no European football gives Yassel valuable time on the training ground. So I definitely don't see Newcastle being dragged into a relegation battle like I've seen some people predict. But with an inexperienced Premier League manager and such a young recruitment-focused strategy, and so many established leaders leaving all at once, this really feels much more transitional than a one where they can go back and push for Europe again. So yeah, transitional season for Newcastle. 13th place, no risk of going down, but I don't think they have enough to really push up the table either. And then in 12th place, I've got Nottingham Forest. So yeah, I think we're going to make a decent improvement on last season. I was very umming and ahhing about where to put Forest because I don't want to overrate us. I've seen people putting like 10th, 9th. I don't think we're going to be that good. But I think, upper mid-table, that's good. I think, that's reasonable from Forest. Finishing 16th last season was disappointing, but it was also a very chaotic year with European football and multiple managerial changes. So with no Europe this time around and a solid manager locked in, I think we should be much more settled and consistent. Obviously, the massive loss is Elliot Anderson. He developed into one of the most important players last season, and replacing what he gave us in midfield is going to be incredibly difficult, if not impossible. But getting up to 116 million for him from Manchester City gives us a huge amount of money to reinvest, which we need to do. And I'd be surprised if we're finishing the market just yet. There's reports we're looking for a midfielder, a striker, and another defender, so I guess we'll see. We know Glasner wants to come more bodies through the door. I really like the appointment of Glasner as well. We've already seen what he can do in the Premier League with Palace, and his system should suit a squad containing players like Morgan Gibbs-White, Murillo, and Milenkovic. We've also added Ousmane Diomande from Sporting for around £34 million, which should give us an incredibly strong back three with Murillo and Milenkovic. That is a back three I really like the sound of. There are still areas I'd like to see strengthened, particularly in midfield after Anderson's departure, but Java Schlager has looked pretty decent so far in pre-season. He looks actually pretty good for a free transfer. And there's just too much quality in this squad for me to see 16th as Forest's natural position, especially with Glasner as well. So, with Glasner, no European distractions and potentially more business still to come, I think we've comfortably up the table, up towards mid-table. I really hope so, at least. I think, I'm being quite level-headed with this. I don't want to overestimate what Forest can do. I don't want to downplay us either. I think 12th is reasonable. And then in 11th place, I've got Leeds United making another positive step forward. Finishing 14th last season was already an excellent first year back in the Premier League. And unlike some of the teams around them, they've got no European football to worry about either. I also think that Daniel Farke answered a lot of questions last season, showing far more tactical flexibility than we saw during his previous spells in the Premier League. That was very impressive from him, to be fair. And I really like their business as well. Now, James Trafford is the standout arrival, arriving from Manchester City in a club record deal after keeping 8 clean sheets in 17 appearances last season. And at just 23, he could potentially be Leeds' number 1 for years to come. And I can't lie, I'm very jealous of that. I wish Forest had gone in for him. Harry Wilson on a free might be even better value though. He produced 11 goals and 8 assists in all competitions for Fulham last season and gives Leeds proven Premier League creativity and some end product as well. Tariq Muharamovic, I'll probably mispronounce that, is another significant addition in defence, whilst there's already a strong core there with Ethan Ampadu, Anton Stack, Noah Okafor and Dominic Calvert-Lewin as well, who scored 14 goals last season, which I think nobody expected. I know a lot of people, myself included, had written him off, but what a piece of the business he turned out to be. I don't quite have them making the jump into Europe just yet, but with another year of Premier League experience, no midweek distractions, and some really smart recruitment, I think that Leeds could be one of the surprise packages this season. They could very easily push up for a European spot. I don't think they will, but there's every potential they could, because there's a lot of teams in Europe above them. So we shall see. But I'm very confident that Leeds will stay up next season. Very good team, very good signings, decent manager. They should be fine. Then in 10th, breaking into the top 10, I've got Bournemouth. They were outstanding last season, finishing 6th and qualifying for Europe for the first time in their history. But I think replicating that whilst balancing the Europa League is going to be a massive, massive challenge. Another big change is losing Andoni Iraola. Now, I do really like Marco Rose as his replacement. He came in early, plenty of time around the players and to get his messages through. He's a good signing, or a good addition, whatever you want to call him. His aggressive, high-pressing style feels like a natural fit for this Bournemouth squad, and he arrives with plenty of experience from Borussia Dortmund, Leipzig, and Mönchengladbach as well. Their business has been typically Bournemouth as well. Antonio Silva looks like an excellent replacement for Marco Senesi, and despite only being 22, already has huge experience with Benfica and at Portugal as well. Alvaro Rodriguez gives them another option up front. Joanalu Sanchez adds another exciting new player at right back. They've also managed to keep players like Alex Scott and Rayan, which is massive. The injury to Eli Jr. Krupi is a massive blow, particularly after he hit double figures last season. But it means they can keep hold of him, and when he returns, he'll still be very good. With the plenty of talent and just depth in this squad is pretty good. I just think that with a new manager combined with their first ever European campaign makes another 6th place finish difficult. I don't think they'll replicate that. But even with that, I'm backing them to remain in the top half, battling once again because they are a very good side and have a really good manager at their disposal as well. But like I said, Europe will be tough to manage. Then in 9th place, I've got Brentford. And I think at this point, we probably need to stop being surprised by them. They finished 9th last season and only narrowly missed out on Europe as well, despite plenty of people, myself included, tipping them to struggle after losing Thomas Frank and several important players the previous summer as well. Keith Andrews deserves a lot of credit for how seamlessly he kept things moving. Their business this summer has been typically smart as well. Mamadou Sangare is the standout signing arrived from Lens for a club record fee after helping them finish 2nd in Ligue 1 and win the French Cup. And I really like that business because he is quality. Jadon Anthony adds more threat out wide, whilst Callum Wilson on a free gives them an experienced alternative up front as well. He will score goals. But the biggest reason I'm confident is Igor Thiago. He scored 25 goals last season and came very close to winning the Golden Boot as well. So having a striker capable of putting up those numbers gives Brentford a much higher ceiling than some of the other teams we've looked at. As long as they play at 3 p.m. on Saturday, because we saw them at the World Cup. That was not pretty. Add that to players like Mikael Damsgaard, Dango Otara, and Kelleher, and Kayode, and there's just a lot of quality throughout this side. They've also got no European football, which is a bonus. So unlike, several teams around them, they will be well rested for each weekly fixture. Brentford can just focus on the domestic season, maybe do a little cup run or something, but they can focus on finishing top half of the Premier League once again. I think they'll be right on the fringes of the European places and could even sneak in if a couple of these bigger teams underperform. I don't see it personally, but you never know. They should be pretty easily top half though. Then in 8th, I've got Brighton. And at this point, this is just where they live. Top half of the table between 7th and 10th. That's the Brighton zone. They finished 8th last season and qualified for the Conference League. And I think they've got enough quality and depth to balance both competitions reasonably well this season as well. They have lost some really important players though. Jan-Paul van Heck was arguably their best defender last season with a £52 million move to Tottenham, whilst Danny Welbeck has joined Chelsea and James Milner has retired. But Brighton's recruitment is so consistently good that I'm almost conditioned to assume that their replacements I've barely heard of would probably be worth around 70 million in around 18 months. So they just get it right every time. Luka Vuskovic is the really exciting one. He's only 19, but already looks like an enormous centre-back prospect and could eventually make the Van Heck deal look like another really Brighton piece of business. He could easily be the one worth 70 million next season. There's also plenty of young attacking talent here as well, with Kostulas potentially getting a much bigger opportunity following Welbeck's departure. He looked pretty decent as well when he played. Europe is the main thing stopping me from putting them any higher though. Their previous European campaign clearly stretched the squad domestically, but the Conference League is okay. It should give Fabian Hutzler some more opportunities to rotate and experiment, and I still think that Brighton are one of the best run clubs in the league, so a top half finish just feels right. Even with European football, they should be fine. Then in 7th place, I've got Tottenham. It was about time that Spurs made their appearance, and I think in 7th is where they belong. Sure, they have to improve eventually, right? After somehow finishing 17th in back-to-back seasons, Spurs have finally responded with a pretty enormous rebuild, spending well over 200 million this summer. The midfield in particular has been completely overhauled. Sandro Tonali is obviously the headline signing and gives them genuine top-level quality, whilst I also really like the signing of Mateus Fernandes from West Ham as well. I actually like him more than Tonali, if I'm honest. They've also strengthened defensively with Jan-Paul van Hecker, Marco Senesi and Andy Robertson. So on paper, this looks like a much stronger and a much more experienced squad as well. I'm also very interested to see what Roberto De Zerbi can do with a full preseason for Tottenham. He came in with 7 games remaining last year and managed to keep them up, fuck's sakes. and his more possession-heavy attacking style should suit some of these technical players that Spurs have brought in. Crucially, they've got no European football, so we'll actually have some time on the training ground to really implement it as well. But there are still question marks. Christian Romero and Jed Spence are pretty much gone. I think Jed Spence was announced yesterday. The attack could still use another addition, I think. And frankly, predicting Tottenham to be good has been a fairly reliable way of embarrassing yourself over the past couple of years. But there's just too much investment and quality here for me to predict another disaster. But I feel that last season as well. It's tough, I think they'll finally make a substantial jump back up the table and get themselves into that European conversation. But if they somehow end up in 17th again, or worse, I wouldn't even be surprised, because it could easily happen again. And part of me is praying that it does, because it is so funny to see Spurs down there. We can hope and pray, surely. Even if I get the prediction wrong and they get relegated, I'll be a happy man. And then in 6th place, I've got Aston Villa. Yes, they're just outside of the Champions League spots this season, but I've got a good reason, They finished 4th and won the Europa League last season, so 6th may seem slightly harsh, but this has been a summer of pretty significant change at Villa Park. Morgan Rogers and Yuri Tielemans are both massive losses, while Luca Dean has also moved on as well. Rogers in particular had become one of Villa's biggest attacking threats, so replacing him ain't going to be straightforward. I do like the rebuild though. João Gomez brings proven Premier League quality into the midfield, while Johan Mazambi is a really exciting addition with huge potential, and Brian Maggio could just be the one to watch. He's only 17, but after scoring against PSG in the Super Cup and becoming the youngest goalscorer in the competition's history, there's clearly something special there. Potential future England international for sure. The biggest reason I still have Villa this high though is Unai Emery. At this point, he's proven repeatedly that he can rebuild and adapt to this side, and winning yet another Europa League last season has only strengthened that reputation and my thoughts on him. My main concern though is that they're now balancing another Champions League campaign alongside trying to rebuild and replace several highly influential players as well. I think there's far too much quality and too good of a manager for them to drop away significantly. I think 6th is about right. But I can see the extra games and that summer turnover costing them a few league positions from last season. But they're still in the European conversation for sure, and probably Europa League once again. Then in 5th place, I've got Manchester United. They made a huge step forward last season under Michael Carrick, eventually finishing 3rd, and making his appointment permanent was absolutely the right decision in my opinion. But with Champions League football returning, I think maintaining that level over a much busier season could be difficult. I really like their midfield business. Yuri Tielemans for around 35 million looks like excellent value after what he produced at Aston Villa, bringing leadership, creativity and loads of Premier League experience with him. Andre Santos is a completely different profile of midfielder, but arguably even more of an exciting addition than Yuri Tielemans, especially long term as well. And together they help reshape the midfield following Casemiro's departure. There's still loads of attacking quality as well. Bruno Fernandes remains at the heartbeat of the team, whilst Bryan Mbeumo and Mateus Cunha should continue to be dangerous as well. With Rashford returning, it looks like Carrick's going to give him a chance as well. He is a good player, but is the noise of Manchester United too much for him? We don't know. I guess we'll find out. The big question for me is whether Benjamin Šeško can take another step forward and provide the consistent goals needed to turn United from a Champions League side into genuine title contenders. Carrick himself has admitted that he still wants more additions as well, particularly with United looking light in certain areas and now having European football to manage as well. I think that's a fair assessment from him. I think they'll have another good season, but with the teams above them strengthening heavily, I'm predicting a slight regression rather than another top 3 finish. I think Europe is going to take too much out of them, to be honest. Then in 4th, I've got Chelsea. I think they could be one of the most interesting teams to watch this season. After finishing 10th last season, Xabi Alonso has come in and has been backed massively, with Chelsea spending over 300 million on another pretty ridiculous collection of talent. Obviously, Morgan Rogers is a headline addition for 117 million, an enormous fee, but after what he showed Aston Villa, putting him aside, Cole Palmer just gives Chelsea two of the most ridiculous, dangerous attacking midfielders in the league, and the coldest as well. Maxence Lacroix strengthens their defence, while players like Giovanni Quenda, Marco Palestra, and Valentin Barco add even more young talent and versatility to this side. Not that it needed any more players. I also quite like the slightly unusual additions of Jordan Henderson and Danny Welbeck. Chelsea have an incredibly young squad, so bringing two players with huge amounts of Premier League experience and leadership could be exactly what they need. Trying to replicate what Sunderland did with Granit Xhaka, I have no doubt about it. They even tried for Xhaka, so I think the link is there. The biggest advantage for Chelsea is no European football. Alonso gets full weeks on the training ground with an absurdly deep squad that can make a massive difference to the league. My only hesitation, and I say this a lot with Chelsea, is that there's still so much change happening, and Alonso has to quickly work out his best team while managing this enormous squad. He's also never managed in the Premier League before, but obviously has played here with Liverpool as well. It's not a completely new league to him. I wouldn't completely rule them out of the title conversation if everything clicks, but it's a huge ask. So I think that fourth is a more realistic step forward for Alonso and Chelsea this season, his first season in charge of them, or he'll be sacked by Christmas. Who knows? On to third now, and I've got Liverpool. After a really disappointing and dismal title defence last season, they finally made the change from Arne Slot to Andoni Iraola, and I really like the appointment. We saw at Bournemouth how effective as aggressive, high-intensity football can be, taking them all the way into Europe, and there are plenty of players in the Liverpool squad who should suit that style perfectly. The problem is that it feels like another significant transition period for Liverpool. Mohamed Salah, Ibrahim Konate and Andy Robertson have all gone, whilst Hugo Ekitike remains sidelined with a long-term injury. Salah in particular leaves an enormous hole in the attack, and even Areola has admitted there are still gaps in the squad that need addressing. I do like some of their business, to be fair. Yarmi Jacket is an exciting long-term defensive addition. Victor Munoz gives them another interesting option out wide, and bringing in Ronald Araujo from Barca adds some much needed experience in defence that's really been ravaged by injuries. But the Barca fans seem to be celebrating his departure, so I'm not sure what that's about. And going forward, they still have some ridiculous quality with Alexander Isak, Florian Wirtz and Dominic Szoboszlai still at the club. Isak and Wirtz have auditioned some promising signs together in pre-season as well. I do think Areola will eventually get this team absolutely flying, but there are enough questions around the defence, replacing Salah, adapting to a new system, which I can't quite put them alongside the top two just yet, but they may be in the conversation come end of the season, but for now, third place. Still respectable. Okay, and in second place, this was quite tough. Not for who's top, but just who'd have in second. I've got Manchester City. On pure squad quality, there's absolutely an argument that they should be favourites for the league, but this is the beginning of a completely new era. After 10 years and 17 major trophies, Pep Guardiola has gone, with Enzo Maresca returning to the club as his replacement. Now, Maresca, he's a Pep disciple. He knows Manchester City from his previous spells there, and has already shown that he can succeed in the Premier League. Succeed may be a strong term there, but replacing Guardiola is about as difficult a managerial job as you can get. Even though he was a Pep disciple, it's still going to be very, very difficult. City still have a ridiculous amount of quality, with Erling Haaland, Phil Foden, Semenyo, Jeremy Doku, Mark Gahey and Gianluigi Donnarumma all at the squad still. So Maresca certainly isn't inheriting a rebuild from scratch. They've gone and added Elliot Anderson for up to 160 million as well. It's an enormous fee. After performances for Forest and then England at the World Cup, I think he'll be an incredible signing. I absolutely love him. It's really sad to see him go. He doesn't look right wearing the number 5 shirt, but yeah, the money was well worth it. His energy, his ability to win the ball, and just the ability to progress the ball gives City a different dimension in midfield. And at 23 years old, he could become a key player for Man City for years. The big uncertainty is Rodri. Barcelona are pushing to sign him, and losing him alongside Stones and Bernardo Silva would be another monumental change in Manchester. Even if he stays, I just think there's going to be an adjustment period under Maresca. They've already lost the Community Shield to Arsenal. They'll still be right in the title race, don't get me wrong, and Haaland will probably score a lot of goals once again, as he does. But replacing the greatest manager in the club history is enough for me to just put them behind Arsenal. Maresca isn't Pep. He may have learned from him, but he's nowhere near the manager Pep was. Or is. So yeah, second place for City, but could easily be third or even fourth. Then in first place, it's no surprise, but I've got Arsenal retaining their Premier League title. After years of getting painfully close, they finally got it over the line last season, and I think that actually winning the Premier League removes a huge psychological barrier for them. They've won a trophy now, they know they can do it. The biggest strength remains their defence. When everyone is available, William Saliba and Gabriel are arguably the best centre-back partnership in the league, maybe even in world football. With David Raya behind them and plenty of depth across that back line, they are really strong at the back. There is concern going into the season with Saliba currently sidelined with a back injury, but Arsenal are better equipped than most teams to deal with injuries. They've got quality, they've got depth, they're fine. And then you look at the business they've done as well. It's good. Bruno Guimaraes adds even more proven Premier League quality to an already ridiculous midfield, and the signing of Christos Tzolis, I really like that as well. He's come off an incredible spell at Club Brugge, producing 43 goals and 45 assists in 180 appearances, winning the Belgian league. I'm named the league's player of the season. Is good stuff. And at 24, he's returning to England as a completely different player from the English we briefly saw at Norwich, which I don't even remember. He's already looked really lively in pre-season as well, and gives Arsenal another direct goal-scoring option from the left, which is arguably one of the few areas of the squad they could improve in. It also means they aren't quite as reliant on Saka in providing so much of their attacking output, which is going to be good for him as well. When you compare it to City, Liverpool, and Chelsea, Arsenal have another massive advantage over them. Continuity. Whilst their biggest rivals are adapting to new managers, rebuilding their squads, Arteta has an established system and a squad that's already proven it can win the league. So with arguably the best defence in England, Guimaraes strengthening the midfield, and Tzolis add another genuine attacking threat out wide, I'm backing Arsenal to go back-to-back and retain their Premier League crown once again. Because they are by far and away the best team in the league at the moment. So yeah, there we have it, my 26-27 Premier League predictions. I've got Hull, Ipswich and Fulham going down, Coventry just about surviving, and a few big clubs like Newcastle having a pretty difficult transitional season. And at the other end, Arsenal going back-to-back ahead of Manchester City. Of course, this is the Premier League, so there's absolutely no chance this table survives the first contact with reality. I'm sure there'll be at least one team I've massively underestimated, one big money signing who's going to completely flop, and probably a prediction here that looks genuinely embarrassing by about October. But anyway, I've been O2GT, and please let me know your predictions down in the comments below, as well as a team that you think I've got massively wrong. And we'll definitely come back to this league towards the end of the season to see how badly some of these takes have aged, like milk I would imagine. If you've enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe for plenty more football content throughout the season, comment below, and give us some hype as well if you feel so inclined. And as always, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.